The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rawson Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rawson Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rawson Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
When something bad happens, who do you turn to? In South Florida, the answer is the Rawson Law Firm. Criminal and DUI defense for when bad things happen to good people. The Rawson Law Firm is a team of 8 criminal defense attorneys, including 2 board-certified criminal trial experts. They also have federal and white-collar divisions in the practice. To learn more about the team and how they can help you, connect on Facebook and Instagram at Rawson Law Firm. You'll also find helpful and entertaining videos on Rawson Law Firm YouTube channel. Just check this episode's description for all the ways you can connect.
And welcome back to another episode of Success in South Florida. I'm your host today, Adam Rawson. And on today's episode, we have Jeremy Beard with us today. Jeremy is the Chief Strategy Officer of Lokation Real Estate. They are doing some really cool, really big things. They're innovative, they're different, they're changing the game, and especially in real estate. So Jeremy, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here and want to learn all about just you personally and all the cool things that you're doing in real estate.
Well, thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. First-time caller, long-time listener.
All right. Good. So Jeremy, first of all, just tell us a little bit about you growing up. Where did you grow up and really kind of just take us through your personal journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up initially in Atlanta, Georgia. And that was through about 14. And, Atlanta was a great place. Loved it. That was back when you could run around outdoors and drink from a hose. And I think my crib was covered in lead-based paint and all that good stuff. So yeah, somehow I emerged, unscathed for the most part. And but that really my formative years, Adam, were spent in Boulder, Colorado. Parents moved and finished high school out there and went to college out there. But that's really where my journey kind of started as far as what I wanted to do, with my life and, from a career standpoint. So it was interesting. This is dating me, right? But there was a movie back in the day, Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Great movie.
Yeah. Classic movie. But I remember at the, ripe age of 12 or 13, I think 12, this is really the embodiment of capitalism. Like, you don't find pure capitalism than you do in, New York and Chicago, specifically Chicago. It's someone's only willing to pay for something or sell something, at agreed upon price. So that's highest bidder, lowest offer. There's your trade. That is basically capitalism in a nutshell. So I went to school out in Colorado, loved it. When I graduated school, I spent 2 years figuring out how to get into the exchanges in Chicago. So I spent my first 10 years as a trader out there, trading in the S&P pit, first as a local, just making the market, creating volatility. And then I got smart and realized the whole reason for commodities versus securities, which is really to take the risk off the commodity producers, grain producers, cattlemen, all that. It wasn't just about the financial instruments that I was in, say the S&P 500. So I segued into managing a book of business for commodity producers, and it was a fantastic experience. Taught me a lot about business. But I'll tell you, it is every bit as nerve-wracking as you would imagine. At 30, I looked older than I do now at 50. And I decided, okay, after enduring that Chicago winter, I said, that's it. I'm moving off floor, and I still kept my brokerage, but moved back to Boulder. 9/11 hit, and the markets went sideways. And I'll tell you, losing money is one thing. Losing money for other people is not fun. So it was
Right.
the first time I'd had that happen, and I quickly decided to get out of it. And so I told my girlfriend at the time, hey, we're moving to either Florida, or I'm moving to Florida or Southern California. I'm done with this weather.
Okay.
So yeah, that was our first foray into South Florida. Moved into Coconut Grove and got a real estate license, and got into real estate again in the early aughts.
So, did she move with you? You said you were moving.
Well, she did.
She
Adam, I should have thought about this a little bit more. I didn't realize it would necessarily indemnify me to marriage, but it certainly did.
Okay.
So here we are, 17, 18 years later.
Amazing. All right, perfect. So it worked out. It all worked out for the best. So Jeremy, what's the number one lesson that you learned, trading in commodities in Chicago, in that real kind of hectic boiler room environment?
Sure, absolutely. That, oftentimes, trades will go against you, they go up and down. But the one thing I learned, and probably the reason I was successful, was the sage advice that was handed to me in my rookie year, if you will, was don't let your losers run. Get the hell out of that trade, because there's always going to be another one unless you get wiped out. And so I've carried that in the back of my head for all these years, that I have all these great ideas that end up maybe not being so great, but cost money. So you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
No. Okay. So right. Yes.
Don't let your losers run. Get out, lessons learned, take something away from it, and parlay that knowledge into your next initiative.
Now, was that easy for you to learn, or did it take some time? Because I know some people might be stubborn and say, or not afraid to admit failure, maybe, or with a decision, with a trade, and it could of course relate to business, right? There's plenty of people that see a business going down south, but they want to try to do everything they can to save it, salvage it. And then 3 years later, for every story that we hear of a miraculous, amazing turnaround, there's probably 10 more of it just tanking even worse. So, how was that for you, learning?
Well, I mean, to err is human, right? And I think that is a fundamental flaw that most of us carry, in that, we have ego. We have, pride in what we're doing. And, it's hard to hold up the mirror and say, you know what, I'm wrong. I'm just absolutely wrong. And I need to get out of that. So, I fortunate was, in a position where it was quantified by dollars and cents. So it was much easier to make those decisions. But even so, I saw a lot of my colleagues that started with me, not make it through that first year. The failure rate was about 90%. And I will probably attribute that aspect to my success in getting through that first year of not having a bunch of losses with minimal gains. If you're on the positive, you let that run. You still take money off the table, but just the ability to recognize when something is not going your way, even though it maybe should, and maybe all the data tells you it should, that you just say it doesn't matter, because this is the reality of the situation, not what it should be, dictated by data or any other forms of input that you're getting.
Well, that's a powerful lesson to learn, especially at a young age, especially when we're talking about successful people who sometimes do have trouble putting their ego aside or letting go of the ego to then make some decision, make a hard decision, and make a logical decision rather than an emotional decision. So I definitely understand you on that. And I'm sure our longtime listeners do as well. So now, okay, you come down to pick Coconut Grove. Why did you pick Coconut Grove out of all places in Florida?
Now that I've lived half a century, I think a lot of things is time and place, stage of life type stuff. At that time, we were dinks, double income, no kids.
Right.
Just knew we wanted to come down to Florida. Didn't know where. Was thinking Tampa, but came down here, rented one of those old Chrysler convertibles with the soon-to-be fiance, and toured the state. But when we finally ended up in Miami, the last stop, which was also the last place we thought we would want to live, because what's the saying? It's great because it's so close to America. But it just embodied everything that I felt was in my early 30s was what I want to do. It was fun. Coconut Grove was thriving. You had a university right there. Lived in a little shanty behind one of these, multi-million-dollar houses there in Coconut Grove. And it was fantastic. Just loved it. So it was really just, hey, if you're going to do it, go all in. And in this case, it was, hey, yeah, Miami is a little bit different. No, we don't speak multiple languages, so that could be a hindrance. But everything in life, poses problems. So we ended up on Coconut Grove. We fell in love with the flora and the fauna, but also just kind of the exoticness, if you will, of Miami.
Right. Definitely different from where you were before, especially Boulder.
Yeah,
So,
right.
I was actually, so 03 to 06, I was in law school at Miami. So I'm sure, we might have crossed paths in the Grove a few times. Who knows?
Yeah. What was that deli across the street there that was so popular? Do you remember that one?
Oh, sure. No, I
When I was
remember
eating there, it was
I
a
remember the
Jewish
bars.
deli.
I
Yeah,
remember
yeah, of course. Yeah,
Sandbar,
the bars
Mr.
you remember, ironically, right?
Yes, of course.
So you
Spent
must
a
have
little
been the
bit of time
designated
there.
driver if you remember them. Good for you.
Always, always,
Responsible.
always. Yeah. Well, we were always good at taking the cabs then. And from where I lived in Coral Gables, it was a nice little 5 minute. I lived right off Edgewater Drive, which was and we were right on a canal that went to the bay. So we were just 5 minute through the back roads. Super nice, easy cab. But yeah, once we got out there, it got lit. So it was good
Yeah,
times.
good stuff. Yeah,
Good
good place.
times.
Good place to go to school, huh?
Yeah. So then, okay, so but you make this major career change, and why did you, out of all things you could have done, why did you decide real estate?
Well, again, I was coming off a nice decade run where I had, done pretty well. The markets were at that time were great. But it was 9/11 hit and it changed the markets dramatically. And getting back to what I was just saying a minute ago, even though you might be right based on what, should be, that isn't always the case of what is. So as we were talking pre-show, it had run its course with me, and I wanted to get into another form and work with my fiance, and start building careers together, in advance of family and all that. So
Right.
real estate seemed like a natural place to go at the time. With the idea was to buy two properties, fix one up. I worked construction all through high school and college, and so on and so forth. A very novel concept, right, Adam? No
Right.
one, no one does that.
Right.
So that was the impetus behind
Okay.
it.
So look, and 01, 02, let's just say you moved down to 02. 02 to 05 was pretty good,
It was a
right?
great run. Yeah, and then
Yeah. And then something happened. So how, walk us through that. The market crashes, right? I believe it was 06.
Mhm.
And walk us through kind of, just how that happened. I mean, at that time you were an agent, right? And
Yes, just a sales
so you didn't,
associate
right.
realtor.
Okay. So just an agent realtor.
Mhm.
You obviously you said you had kind of side projects, maybe flipping or, different things. But how did that, change everything, not just the landscape, locally or even, state or US wide, but specifically for you? How did that affect you? And what
But yeah,
decisions did you make based on
it
that?
was a it was a seminal moment. It was an inflection point of, wow, we're both realtors, and all of a sudden we're not making any money. So
Right. Went
someone's
from a
got to,
lot to a little, like a cliff, right?
yeah,
Just
overnight.
dropping off.
Yeah,
Okay.
precipitous fall. And so, at that point, given my background with numbers and having all the licenses, Series 3, 7, 63, all those for trading, it just so happened that one of a realtor at EWM there in Coral Gables, her husband was looking for someone for a startup venture and some cutting edge security products, working with Israelis on smart video, intelligent video at the time, which was, very bleeding edge. And he wanted someone as a national sales manager that, the whole trading thing, going back at him, the trading was just the fun part. The building the book of business over the first, 2-3 years was the hard part. Getting on the phone, smiling and dialing, getting confidence through a phone that someone's willing to give you money.
Right.
So, you learn a
And
lot.
Were these cold calls or
These
were
were
they
cold calls.
warm? So just
These
straight
weren't
cold
warm at
call.
all. These were Wolf of Wall Street, but without the nefarious. There was some. They were substantive. There was something behind them.
Okay,
But no,
right.
it was the boiler room mentality. Getting on the phones, and so this opportunity presented itself. I met with a gentleman. He was who I'll refer to as my first mentor. He was working in a super cool office there right on Brickell. I was really enamored with him and his successes in the past and personality. I'm a big personality believer, and believer in personality. I don't hire based on sheepskins. To this day, I hire on your personality, tenacity, drive, and that, the ability to think on your feet, right? So he and I hit it off and jumped into a whole new world that I spent the next decade involved in. And that was evolved from high-end security, again, technologically based security, which was all the rage, if you will, at post 9/11. And that led to starting a company all the way through acquisition. I ran point on that when Honeywell came in at a trade show we were at. Got a lot of experience through that first deal. I ended up subsequent to that doing a few more acquisitions being acquired. So I became, I don't want to say savvy in that because I didn't really have the traditional background, but I also believe that the best way to learn is through experience. And I tell all new realtors that I might speak to, just get out there. Everything you learned
Right.
so far on a book, no, get out there. Start with a rental
Right.
just to see what it's like working with people. So ended up working with Mr. Tatum, and Honeywell bought us out. That led to working with another consulting group that was based out of Fort Lauderdale, Mobius Security Group. They were an outfit primarily comprised of X3 letter guys, FBI,
Okay.
CIA. And I was the first business person they brought in as things were starting to taper just a bit, meaning the money wasn't just being thrown at everyone as quickly as it was for those first few years. Now you had to go out and earn it by virtue of, your bona fides and your experience. So I got a lot of experience in competitive bidding for government contracts, but moreover, learning how to grow a business from, a couple million to 10, 15 million in acquisition. And that led to a succession, 3, in fact, of those.
So
And
let me
yeah,
stop you there,
please.
Jeremy. So you're talking about kind of, scaling a company, scaling a business from a couple mil to 10, 15 mil, and then, and then an exit. What were the biggest hurdles that you and your team had to face to really, 5x, 7x, 8x, 10x the business?
Exposure and conveying your value proposition, articulating your value proposition against your competitors. So if, for instance, we were shortlisted going into an interview, I'd like to say, as I'm patting myself on the back here, became pretty adept at laying landmines. And pretty soon you get to know who your players are, right? That's a great lesson my father taught me. When you're playing poker, it's not enough to know poker.
Right.
You got to know the players.
Right.
So
Yep.
once you know the players, then you can play to the weaknesses. Stay away from the strengths. So I would lay landmines and knowing they would walk into them if I was going ahead of them, or conversely, if I came in afterwards, I'd fire missiles knowing what their spiel was. But getting back to the heart of your question, I think the most difficult thing was initially just, going from a very small business, that's very local, trying to, get these multi-million dollar contracts was having, showing that you do have a track record or experience to do said job. But then B is getting enough exposure that you start working towards words of mouth, which is directly, how it parlays into real estate and real estate agents.
Right. And just relationships,
Yep.
like trust, right?
Networking, all that.
Okay. So now before there's some other things that you mentioned that I thought were fantastic, that you said you hire for personality and, you really want to, tenacity, drive, being able to think on your feet. So how, if you don't know the person and you're interviewing them, how are you testing for somebody that fits that kind of personality, behavior, and culture?
Gosh, I'm such an off the cuff guy. That's Adam. It's hard to say that. I mean, it would range. Generally, if they had it, quote unquote, I knew immediately. If they
Right.
kind of had
Well,
that,
a lot of people you can just tell,
you
right?
can
You
tell the
can't.
sparkle in the eye, the you can feel the energy when they walk in the room, whatever it may be. But also at the same time being humble and not, it's not, me, I, this. If it was more we, us, those are things that I would look for, for the
Okay.
ones that were, your blue chip prospects, right? Um,
Right.
but oftentimes, if I found someone in the middle, I would, again, I think that ability to adapt to different scenarios and situations is crucial. Um, so, I'd throw an off the wall question. Hey, just out of curiosity, why is a tennis? You know why a tennis ball is fuzzy? And they look at me, and if they could, come up with something, whimsical or fact based or anything else. All right, it's the people that just sat there, deer in headlights, and said, "Well, I didn't. You didn't tell me there was going to be a test in this interview.
Right.
All right, here's the door. Vaya con Dios. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Do you know why a tennis ball is fuzzy, Adam?
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
know?
Do I know? Yeah, no, I don't know.
I don't either, so that's why I
Yeah.
asked. I'm just kidding. No,
Okay.
it's
Right.
because it increases friction across the strings that allows for the English on the ball,
Mm,
and to
okay.
and because otherwise tennis balls would be doing 180 miles an hour versus 120. So yeah, then you're
Okay.
right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But no, I think that's a phenomenal question and just way to, really, especially in what you do, but even in what we do, it's you have to be able to think on your feet and make decisions and just deal with the unexpected. And so that's a great, I think that's a fantastic advice that you're giving right there. So that's awesome. Eh,
I mean, there's
Go
always a
ahead.
time and a place to admit, like, you know what, that's a great question. And I just don't know that I can answer that definitively. Let me get right back to you. But, again, when you're in a situation in many professions, yours, mine, and so many others, you're almost doing yourself a disservice if you're not a well-rounded individual from a knowledge standpoint, to be able to have just enough to answer the questions appropriately, and then be able to move on. 2 ounces of truth and 2 tons of bullshit doesn't always get it done. That can be, you can see through those stories pretty quick. But if you can speak to it a little bit, and then follow up later, I think that's very important to keep the flow of the conversation and increase the confidence, being able to speak to it, but also at the same time, coming back to them with additional information as needed on that specific question.
Right. Now, how do you also differentiate between the people that are just all, all sizzle and no steak, right? The people that are great off the cuff, but then when you dig deep, there's just not much there besides fluff and bullshit. So
Mhm.
I'm sure you've had plenty of people that you've been around in your career that who have, it's taken some time, right? But who have
Right.
shown that. So how do you, as you evolve and get better at this, how do you differentiate those type of people?
Well, I think it becomes pretty evident pretty quick, who those are, that they're great on the front end, tip of the spear type stuff. But beyond that, they quickly decline in their ability to inspire confidence. So, again, I'm a big believer in playing to your strengths and knowing what those are, as well as knowing what your weaknesses are. I'm the first one that will stand up and say, "Hey, I'm not great on the management side, so." I'm going to let you guys, I'm not here to look over your shoulder. I'm kind of a chain of command guy. So these days, it's not quite so easy just to say, hey, go do this and get it done. But to answer your question, more appropriately, I would try to allocate them to a new aspect of the either sales cycle or whatever it may be. Maybe they're just on the front end setting appointments. Maybe they're type person I bring in just as color commentary, to keep conversation moving. why, especially if it's an overly technical meeting, again, people work with people they like. So
Right.
when you get into a very dry presentation going over technical, bits and whatnot, it's good to intersperse, a little bit of fun and whimsy into those conversations just to keep people's attention. So I would try to put people, in position to succeed. And if you're great up front and you got a big personality, but not much after that, then great. You're going to be my show opener.
Right. Okay. I like that. The show open. I do. So Jeremy, what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a little break to hear a word from our sponsor, the Rawson Law Firm. I hear they're pretty cool people there. And when we come back, I want to talk just about what you're doing at Location. Again, you guys are doing big things. So I want to move on to all the really cool things that you're doing there, because I think you, can provide so much value and insight to our audience. So we will be right back, and we'll get to it.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
Cool. Okay. So, all right, we are back from our commercial break with Jeremy Beard. Now, Jeremy, how did you, I know you eventually get back into real estate, and, so how did that happen?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. And it harks back to when we first moved down here. My wife's brother was just graduating college, and I know he was he was a big outdoor guy too. We grew up in the mountains, but he and I both had an affinity for the water and such. So we'd only been down a few months, and I remember calling him saying, the market's booming. This is just fantastic, and he said, this was on my short list. I'm on my way. See you in 2 days, So
Okay.
he came down and he got involved in real estate, and he carved his own path. He went to work for a home builder. He figured out the art of the meet and greet, cold calling. And then with all those things that I mentioned before, those attributes of, getting someone to, know you, like you, and then trust you. And then that will lead to, in this case, a real estate transaction. So he opened his own brokerage in 2009. At this point, the last company I'd worked for just before the break, we were talking about Mobius had been bought by a very large engineering firm. Upper management offered me a position to move to Texas. So now I'm in Texas, in Dallas, Fort Worth. Had both my boys were born, as the adage, as the saying goes about Texas, everything's bigger. Yeah.
Right.
So what I could have afforded, again, referring to the shanty in Coconut Grove, I got a 5,000 square foot house on a men only golf course right in the heart of downtown for 300,000,
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I obviously I took the job, and was there for a long time. It was fantastic. But I think a lot of type A's get bored over time. And as much as I love Texas and the community and the sense of family and all that, that really I didn't feel in South Florida as much, again, especially in the Coconut Grove area. I just loved it, but you can only have so many poker nights with the guys and whatnot. So,
Right.
and Texas doesn't have that back door, which in this case, I'm referring to the mountains of Colorado or Florida, the water. So, he started his own company called K Company Realty. At that point, it was in the toughest years, 2000, 8, 9, 10, just
Right.
coming out of things. And he really hated that, traditional firms, charge so much, or he had to take so much out of their commission. A typical real estate agent will give back, 10 to 30% of their commission back to the brokerage. And a lot of brokerages didn't have a value add. They basically just, would stamp the paperwork and say, thanks, give me 30% on the dollar.
Right. Yeah.
So, he developed relationships with his agents, and he hated seeing them leave and look for better opportunity, meaning save more money for their commission. So he decided to take on this novel new concept at the time of what's called 100% commission model brokerages, where you're not traditional in the sense where you take a split. but it's more of a pay-as-you-go service, like brokerage as a service, as we came to know with how SaaS,
Right.
Microsoft
Okay.
moved from, hey, you buy
Right.
the disk and you put it in your computer and you got Word and Outlook, to no, you're paying monthly, and you're end up
Right.
going to pay a lot more.
Adobe, everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody.
So, this is the same time, right? So he decided that, technology, he was prescient enough to know that technology was really going to come into the real estate silo and help agents work a lot smarter, not harder per se, and to be able to scale their business. And he embraced this 100% business model, which obviously your margins, go way down. You're not nearly as profitable, but sometimes volume is the play. So he, I had always kind of consulted a little bit on the side for him, or I don't want to say consulted. How about I was a sounding board based on
Okay.
my background and experience?
Right.
Um,
You're the
because I
brother-in-law
was
that
not
has
being
to.
paid for it. That implies I was being paid, Adam.
Right. So you're the good brother-in-law, just hearing all the crap.
Well, in that way, I can at least say, "Hey, this advice is only worth what you pay for it, too." So,
Right. That's true.
that was my
If,
disclaimer.
if what I tell you doesn't work, don't blame me until you pay
Yeah,
me.
in the stock market, it was past performance is not indicative of future results. With him, it was, "Hey, here's just what I think. What do I know?" Remember Dennis Miller, the comedian? You're younger than I
Yep.
am.
Yep.
He would go
Yep.
on his rant at the end. I just love how he'd finish it. He'd be like, "Well, that's my opinion. I guess I could be wrong. As if
Right.
he's never wrong. So that's how I kind of preface it. But anyways, he was on. He was. Again, to use that word, precipice of really taking off. And I've always believed in his vision, and the model I thought was really had something to offer, a decade down the road. And, the first few people that get in usually are, ideally suited to get the market share. So I kind of reluctantly came down for a little while just to, at this point, to consult. Considering franchising at the time, South Florida Business Journal had just written an article about him and gaining 350 agents in 1 year in his first year of being, of moving to this model. So fast forward 2 more years, I came down. He had a key hire with who is now our COO, Jonathan. And so the idea was to come down, make sure that we had a foundation to build off of and could scale. When we got down here, we were so busy that we found less time for being able to go and dig dirt and, build that foundation as it was just taking care of business. So it took a little bit longer, I'll fully admit, to get to where I personally wanted to be before we decided to, say franchise or something else. Obviously, this was Nathan's call. But we quickly got away from that and decided to instead aspire to be one of the top 5 firms in Florida, grow from there, and expand, and then see what the future holds, in 2020. So this was a 5-year plan, right?
Okay. So now we're about 2015, right?
Yep,
Is that what you're saying?
2015. So
We're
August,
just
moved
now 5
down,
years.
got
Okay.
down here, and first just, really implementing those standard operating procedures, not just shooting from the hip. That
Well, now,
way.
Jeremy,
Yes.
did you start as the chief operator or the chief strategy officer? Like, what was your
No,
title, your role
yeah, at
here?
the
So are you
time,
in the ops at this point, or are you kind of still high, like, outside relations
yes and
and
no.
strategy?
I mean, again, ultimately, so I was the business guy, right? I was the one with
Okay.
corporate experience, the acquisition experience, et cetera. So my role was business development. So we didn't have a C-suite, hierarchy at that time. It was him, he owned the company. Jonathan was our managing broker, and I was a business guy, right?
Okay.
So there were our titles. Yeah,
Just three cool dudes trying to change the world.
yeah, that's it. Just trying to do the right thing, and through the empathetic, altruistic stance on what realtors really need and what they want, and then how they should be compensated for it, or how we should be compensated, I guess, in turn. So yeah, the three of us, had a great time for a few years. We went out and did all sorts of silly videos, parodies of great movie scenes, making fun of other brokerages, stuff we could get away when we were younger and smaller. Now,
Right.
I'm sure we would just be sued immediately. Yeah, because we have quickly grown through the ranks here. In fact, there was an article that came out I think it was just about a year and a half ago, how we've grown faster in Florida than anyone other than EXP, which is a big national juggernaut with tons of money behind it. So I mean, that's a particular point of pride for myself, and I'm sure Nathan and Jonathan, that we've been able to punch above our weight and grow at such a steady clip. And it's not just by top line growth, Adam. It's, I think, most importantly, what a lot of brokerages miss is retention of those agents. The whole reason Nathan pivoted towards this model was to keep the very agents that he had already brought in and invested time and energy into training and coddling. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of these big franchise brokerages are seeing. People will come in, they're making, by the time it's all done said, they're losing 30%, they're being put on a team. Right. You're making 40 cents on the dollar. If you're lucky, 33 cents is, 35 cents. So your first year real estate's tough. You might do a couple deals with people right. But unless the market's incredible like it was just after the pandemic, it's unlikely that you're going to make six figures. And even if you are, going to make six figures and you only make 35,000, you're kind of pissed, right?
Right.
So kind of lost my train of thought there as I was working my way around the answer.
Well, we're talking about, just kind of how you guys were really growing, and the three of you guys.
Yeah. So retention, that's where I was. So our whole thing
Right.
was take care of the ones we have, inside, really try to imbue a sense of culture and belonging. Even though we had this model that wasn't really conducive to that style approach, that family sense, because we, at that point, were primarily focused on, South Florida, Orlando down, in those markets. So we'd have a lot of agents that were joining in Tampa and Orlando that were kind of far away. So we quickly figured out we need to be there, upper management, as it were, at the time. We need to get out there and get that handshake in, buy drinks, get our agents to, again, foster that sense of community and belonging. So I think that was kind of the formula of creating kind of a hybrid approach to the real estate brokerage, that is lower your cost of footprint by not having brick and mortar in every other city block, but having a centralized model and being able to afford them all the tech tools and resources they need, all the while still having a sense of culture and belonging and networking ability. So we retain a lot of our agents.
So Jeremy, that's great to know, because here you are, you're changing the model to make it better pricing for, right? Which technically, as the brokerage, your consumer is the agent, right? I mean, that's who you're selling to. You're selling to the agent, so then they can go and then sell to to people buying and selling real estate. So at first, it does seem to me like this is more of a commodity where you're like, we're cheaper, right? We're cheaper. It's better for you. And we know once you commoditize things, it always goes down to price. But then now you're providing, you talked a lot about value adds and culture and and technology. So how did you balance starting to kind of get into the market more of a commodity, but then turn it into a culture, value adds, and reasons for actually staying besides price? Because I found that the stickiness is really, when you decommoditize something.
And that's well said, Adam. And a lot of people don't differentiate that. Much like the sales cycle on the front end, there's various stages, but so is true with the entire course of that relationship with your, in our case, the agents. So I think it was that, I don't want to say it was an epiphany, but realization that, we need to effectively market and brand ourselves as, again, leadership who cares about our agents. One of our tagline is built by realtors for realtors. I mean, we'd all been in the trenches and we had stories to tell, just like all of our agents. So we went out, and Nate came in and said, we need to come up with something, something kind of fun to brand with. So we bought a 1969 VW bus, put a little bit of money into it, just enough to make it run, and dangerous. Oh, is it dangerous? And it was near and dear to Nathan's heart because his father had one, and so
Oh,
he
I
had one
bet that's
growing up,
fun.
and it just kind of fit. We're thinking at first it was getting, hey, we'll do a drop top, a late '60s Mustang, and it just didn't fit the bill. We were more fun loving
Mhm.
than that. It wasn't more about the guy with the fast car; it was about good times had by all.
Right.
So yeah, we
Okay.
fired up this VW bus and proceeded to take to the open road with a videographer. And this is before, again, this is 2016. So it was before, all these things really got popular, on YouTube and everything
Right.
else. So we make videos of it, and we just made sure that they had a direct line to us, that they weren't just, when they called, that they didn't go into a black hole of a voicemail, that when they did get someone online, that they weren't just professional, but personable. Again, with regards to our hiring, style, and that also we personally were very available to them, to coach, to do whatever they needed. So I think it was really making that pivot to get out there, get the finger on the pulse of what's really going on, not make decisions in a vacuum. We created a leadership council that following year. Nate, again, great idea of his part to get some of our
Okay.
top agents, most vocal agents. So we
Okay.
started really bringing in outside. We want to hear from you. You tell us what you need.
Nice. Nice. And okay. So, and now, well, I mean, you guys, the market in general just had probably what the best 2.5 year run it's ever had, something
It
like
did,
that.
followed by
Right.
one. Yeah.
Right. Followed by, pretty
Followed
bad
by-
year. But so you guys keep expanding now. Where's location now as far as a company, right? And mission, vision, and where do you guys, what does the future hold?
Well, hopefully it's unbridled. There's manifold opportunities, I feel. I mean, again, always the acquisitions out there. We ourselves are right now really kind of turning into a merger acquisition focus. I personally am now, just because of the strife of the market for the past year, with interest rates being so high and home prices being so high. Um, so the
Well, let me
idea,
ask you this. So
yeah, please.
what's your value add? So when you're talking about acquisition, talking about acquiring other brokers
Yes,
or
other small
other bro,
brokerages and bringing them
okay.
in, because one thing I learned, Adam, is that currently just in this past week, when it comes to brokerages, I still oversee them coming in versus say the recruiting of the single agents or teams. So just this past week, we brought a couple broker owners over that, the 80% of brokerages in the United States have 25 or less agents.
Okay.
Now, you have to understand though, they're out there doing their own deals. Then they also have to be the broker, meaning answer all the questions, help with the paperwork. They have to be the IT specialist. They have to, take all the liability for the contracts themselves. And then all the costs of running a business. And then when you look at us and how inexpensive we are to operate through, and you could just basically take all that administrivia and liability off your plate and allow you to focus on being, playing to your strengths again. So that's been something that we've done a lot here in the past year, seen a lot of brokerages, small brokerages come over to us, which then lends another level of mentorship and I don't say camaraderie, but tutelage by having subject matter experts.
Well, and some of these broker owners, it could be a lonely world for them having to do all these different things. And especially, people can can ignore that while the market's hot, extremely hot. But then the minute, 6 months into a major dip, then it becomes even lonelier and becomes even worse when the money's not coming in. So that is something that I think that you guys provide, that's really important. And so have you looked into other organizations, maybe other areas of business that have had a similar model? Like my mind immediately goes to the DSOs, the dental service organizations that provide the back end, and that's how the rise of corporate dentistry or even the rise of corporate medicine
Sure.
over the last 10, 15 years. Have you looked into some, just other fields to see if there's parallels and, hey, they're doing it this way. Maybe we can do it in real estate in a similar manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's been a boon to us operationally, is the advent of being able to use competent VAs to handle some of the grunt work, for lack of a better term, not to be derogatory, but just moving the bits on the table, just from an organizational standpoint and whatnot, has really helped us from that standpoint. And yeah, I often, do competitive analysis, not just within our silo, but other marketplaces, looking for where trends are. I believe in following the money. We're now in 6 states, and those 6 states are 6 of the 7 fastest growing states in the United States. So basically, our whole expansion has been dictated by where are people going, what are what's going on from a socioeconomic standpoint that are causing people to move, or political standpoint,
Right.
moreover. So cue the New Yorkers and the Californians.
Right. So
You
I'm
know,
saying you guys aren't moving to, you're not opening a brokerage in San Francisco anytime
yeah,
soon.
yeah, we're not. I hear there's a lot of
Okay.
office space, so we probably get some
Right.
cheap office space. But no, we're not, and that would probably be the last frontier for us, right? International.
Yeah.
But California, just the further away you go, the harder it is to maintain
Right.
those rigors, those standards. But yeah, we cover pretty much the entire Southeast now. Texas is a crucial market. Again, below the Mason-Dixon line in a red state is where most people were moving because of the pandemic.
Right.
Now we're seeing the converse of that, where people are moving back up north from South Florida,
Oh, okay.
moving into the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama. Just ranked as one of the Birmingham's the fastest growing city in America. Who knew?
Wow.
Yeah,
No.
right. So I think it is. I think that's apt that you mentioned that you got to follow see where the trends are, and you want to be on that early adopter portion of that bell curve, because otherwise you miss the proverbial boat, so to speak. So I'm saying that my father always used. It's sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and my next generation, or my evolution of that, is I'd rather be good and lucky, I guess.
Right. Of
So I
course.
would, that always can play a role in it, but it's always based in data for me. I like to measure things. I want to know where I've been before I know where I'm going to go.
Right. And so you're you're the one now that's kind of plotting, scheming, planning, thinking about the different locations, different, states, areas.
Mhm.
To me, that's always exciting. It's like like a strategy video game. You just plug
Yeah,
and play. And
yeah,
I mean,
it's the
I
old
love that
risk.
stuff.
Hey, look, let me go put this X many forces in this place called Texas.
Right.
And are we going to grow organically? Are we going to do it by acquisition? Are we going to do are we going to implement offices right off the bat? Are we going big or going home, or are we just going to do the prudent, organic growth strategy? All those are dictated by a myriad of factors.
Right. And you can do different things in different markets. Right.
100%.
And try. So then how you know, have you guys had a sense of failure, and how has that motivated you, or, kind of changed your thinking at times?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because sometimes your greatest failure can be your success.
Right.
And we did have growing pains. So we had I'm the numbers guy here, so I run through everything as I just wrapped up my year end. In 2020, we had a 45% growth, which was phenomenal because we had already been ranked in the Inc. 500 for 4 years running at that point.
Okay.
So we grew so quickly, but a lot of those agents, Adam, were people that are just getting licensed. As you and I are talking offline, it takes a while to get traction in real
Right.
estate. Even if you get a contract that next day, it's 45 days till closing. A lot can go wrong before you get that check in the bank. I think one of the hardest lessons learned was that, as much as our torrid pace of growth was fantastic, it was the first time, as much as I talked about retention, we were seeing people come in and not get what they needed. The new agents that needed
Okay.
to sit here, repeat after me. Again, we talked about experience offline versus book learning, which I think is most important, but it needs to be supplemented. So we quickly circled the wagons, built up a quite robust new agent training platform, implemented learning management systems, doubled down on webinars. Again, now we're getting into pandemic time. So the rise of Zoom
Right. Yeah.
video webinars. So we
It was
went,
good timing for that.
it
Right.
definitely
It's
was.
definitely
Yeah.
good timing.
Right. Absolutely. So I think that was probably, if there was anything that I would say would have been that was the biggest learning experience was sometimes you can grow too fast. So now that we grow 3x that rate and, just 3 years later, based on the amount of monthly joins, it doesn't stress it. That was our stress test. And now we're great. We can handle 2 to 3x what we do right now based on how we've structured our team, the redundancy levels of redundancy built in, et cetera.
Right. Well, I always find when you step out of that comfort zone or you struggle, that's where, you can go and have an amazing breakthrough, or things can just get tremendously worse. And usually the people or the companies that have a major success are the ones when they're at that crossroads, or, they're on the verge of having issues, they really have that critical breakthrough, and then things go extremely well versus, tanking, right. Or giving up. So now, Jeremy, last question that I have for you, that I have for everybody. And I want you to think about this. As a highly successful person, across multiple industries, I'm sure there's a level of competitiveness to you as well. Do you love to win, or do you hate to lose? And more importantly, why?
That is usually I'm not caught without words, because can I check C, all the above?
Okay, sure.
I'm kidding.
I care more about the why, really. So tell
Yeah,
me kind of
I
where your
mean,
brain goes when you
yeah,
hear
I
that
love to
question.
win, but to me, it's the thrill of the chase is what really gets me. I love problem solving. Dogged determinism has always been a hallmark of mine. I want to break through where someone else couldn't. If you can't get to, senior level, someone that I need to speak to, then great. You know what? I'm going to take it, and I will get to that person.
Right.
So I
Get
think
to
it's
yes.
really the chase for me. The thrill of that is far exceeds the win. The win is just the validation. But equally, the losses. I mean, add the 1,000 quotes or memes on losing, and when you do lose, what you take away from that, from an experience standpoint. Again, I think we mentioned offline, when I do hiring, it's, I look for dynamic personalities, but if, if there's not an air of humility about them, I don't, I just don't want a bunch of egos. I want someone that's capable of learning. So I think curiosity and learning, is a continuum, and should never, should always be ongoing. So I think I fall somewhere in between, that I learn a lot more from the losses than the wins. Um, but the wins for me really are just verification, or validation rather, of my efforts put into gain said win. So I like to win. I don't like to lose, but there's merit in all aspects of it.
Right.
Is that
Okay.
is
Now,
that
Jeremy,
that's as vanilla as I could go for you, Adam?
oh,
So
it's good.
that was my pleading the fifth, I guess.
Right. No, it was definitely good. It's great insights into how people think, especially about winning and losing in competition and what motivates them and all that. So that's why I love asking that question to everybody. Now, Jeremy, where can people find you? So if anybody's listening to this and was like, wow, man, like this guy's amazing, I want to reach out, or I want to follow him in the company and the progress, what's the best way to get in touch?
You cannot, Adam. With 4,000 agents, I don't put my name, number, anything out there. That's why I'm not the broker. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
I'm pretty easy to find from, just a Google search quickly turns it up. But Location Real Estate, we're based here in Pompano Beach as our mothership. And they can reach me at Jeremy at Location. We spell it with a K just to be cool.
Mhm.
Lokation, followed by RE for realestate.com. And our phone number here is 954-545-5583. My direct extension is 103. Anyone can call me anytime, but LinkedIn profiles, the socials are a good way to hook up with me too, as much as I hate
Perfect.
them.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome, Jeremy. Well, thank you so much. I think our listeners are going to have tremendous value from this. You guys, I'm going to be continuing to follow you guys in your growth, and not just growth, but dominance, because I know that's coming And yeah, thank you so much. This was fantastic to kind of sit down and just talk and pick your brain.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and best to you, and really appreciate the invite. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see you guys around. We'll cross each other's paths soon enough.
Awesome. Take care.
Thanks, Adam.